Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of History Behind the Page, the live series where you get to know more about the people behind all things history. Tonight's episode, I am super excited. We have Bob from Iowa class battleships on. We're going to get to know him a little bit more, chat a little bit about history. This is also a live Q&A too, so you are more than welcome to ask questions. I do ask that on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there is a question mark bubble. Please submit your questions there, as sometimes they get lost in the comments, and we want to make sure that we can get to as many questions in the hour. Sorry, I'm talking fast. I've been assembling a desk for literally 2 hours, and I shouldn't have done it before doing this. So anyways, let's get Bob on and get this show going. I don't know if it worked, except. Hey,
Hey, sir.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, good. It's Wednesday, so
I got you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on and joining us on History Behind the Page. Super
I'm
excited to
glad
have
to be
you.
here. I'm happy to be here. I didn't ever know if I'd make the cut.
Oh, stop. You have an amazing page, so I was super excited you said yes, and we want to get to know a little bit more about you, and then a little bit about history and all that stuff. So
Okay.
yeah, so let's get a rolling. Why don't you start off by telling us what got you into history?
I guess, I sucked at math, honestly. And
Me too.
yeah. And I grew up in the South, and history is a big deal, where I grew up at. And I had an uncle who was in the Navy. I just kind of was into military stuff. And I kind of just started going into naval stuff, especially. And then, I followed, I guess, the regular path of every other kid, books and war movies and, Top Gun, because I'm 46. So, it's just, then I was like, God, I'd love to be a pilot. And then I realized I suck at math. And I watched Sans Iwo Jima with John Wayne, and that kind of got me hooked on the Marine Corps. And that's where I ended up going. But I've always been a big history fan, especially, I think when I was a kid, what I first was interested in was the American Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of progressed on from there. But yeah, I'm a big naval historian fan for
Naval
sure.
historian. So you said you joined the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a
1996 to 2000.
Tell us a little bit
I
about
was
that.
in a course a long time ago. I lived in Italy for 2 years. I was stationed there, the Marine Corps Security Force Company, and then 2 years as a scout with the Light Armored Recon Unit out of Camp Lejeune.
Mm-hmm.
I got out. I did about a year of fooling around, and I got on with the police department in Tuscaloosa, in Alabama, even though I'm not from here. And I've been here going on 22 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I'm a motor officer, so I ride the motorcycle every day. That's my primary job now.
Nice. Awesome. So what got you hooked into battleships? What I know you said you're really big into naval
Yeah,
history, but why specifically?
I read an article in high school one time about naval gunfire support in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
because at that time I was really big into World War II, but my grandfather had got me a Vietnam magazine subscription, just like
Uh-huh.
as a gift. And I remember reading an article about the New Jersey, because she did 1 year in Vietnam on the gun line. And after that, I just couldn't get enough. And of course, this was pre-internet, so any kind of thing I could find. I don't know. I like the way that the Iowa class battleships look. I like the sleekness of them. I just thought they were just really cool in general. And then naval history has always been something I've enjoyed, especially with the Marine Corps related stuff. So like back there, that's the USS Houston
Mm-hmm.
at the last battle she was in at Sunda Strait. So the Marines were on that. Yeah, I don't know. I really just really always dug the way they looked. I know that sounds
Yeah.
goofy, but I've been on every one of them but Missouri. I haven't made it to Hawaii yet. So I know the guys who work on the Iowa. They took me down to the bottom of the ship under the shaft, and then we went to the top of the fire control tower. So I mean, it's just something I enjoy. What got you into history?
What got me into history? I learned about the Civil War in middle school, and we played the Civil War in class, like we did day by day, and we split the class up into the North and the South. And I was in the North, and I was designated Ulysses Grant, and we just acted out the Civil War, and then we watched the movie Glory. And at the time, I was in the Matthew Broderick fan club. So I was like super excited. I was like, Matthew Broderick, I'm so excited. And then the movie just caught it, and then that was kind of
I got you.
what got it started.
It's funny how movies influence you so much on history. If you find one thing's interesting, and that's like Wikipedia. I could stay on Wikipedia for hours because I'll click one topic and then there'll be another little link and I'm like, oh, and they just keep going and going and going. So
those rabbit holes are so time consuming, but so awesome, because half the time I will research one thing, one specific topic, and then I am on something completely different in a different conflict about a different branch of the military or a battle.
Sure.
I'm like, how did I get here? Like, this is so weird. But
it's so easy to do it too. Like any kind of history, like, you get like at the Titanic and then you're on this one person and then this and then that, and you can spend easy time. I'm familiar.
It's those rabbit holes just get you. Have you been on the USS North Carolina?
Yes, I haven't been on North Carolina since around 99 or 2000. I'm probably this summer going to get my personal motorcycle and drive to North Carolina to see that. I was in Providence, Rhode Island a couple of years ago teaching. I teach a motorcycle class for motor officers. It's my side business. Mm-hmm. And I hit the Massachusetts, the Constitution, and the Salem all in one day. And I'm going to tell you, it was fast because I could spend hours. I'll go to the Alabama down in Mobile Bay, and I'll spend 4 or 5 hours there. And I'm like, oh my God, how did I end up staying here so long? Yeah, I'm annoying. My friends I'll go with some friends, and they're like, what about this? And then I'll start talking. And they're like, yeah. Well,
they're like, we need to learn to stop asking.
But I guess the hardest part, like, when you run a page, like if you make a little mistake, people cannot wait to
tell you.
Find something. I'm like, look, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean to put this little thing and that little thing. And it is funny though. People, at least to get, you know what I'm talking about. Like people at least interacting with stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I posted that thing the other day. It's like, what are people looking for? Because I used to have a lot more hits, and then suddenly it's just started to drop off. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you want more of? And people were like, well, I'd like to see, more other stuff besides just the battleship stuff. So I guess it's like, you run a rib place and all you sell is ribs. At some point, you've got to sell a little something else. So I've tried to recently do a little bit more. Like I posted the last couple of days. I appreciate you liking them, by the way. I know they were kind of long. And I'm not an English major. That's why I'm a police officer. So, like, I'm not that great.
Well, I think for me, when I do like long posts, because I'll do like carousel posts where I'll do multiple photos and you swipe through, and the text I have to do like super small because I want to try and get as much information in the post as possible, because there's like it's information that needs to be told. Like you can't summarize it. It doesn't have the full like awe effect. So,
or you start cutting it and you go back and you're like, you read it again. You're like, oh man, the main points that I wanted, I accidentally left a couple of them out, and you feel like maybe it's a little
and then you're like, well, that totally defeated the purpose.
I like that. I posted that picture of King George VI, Queen Elizabeth, Eleanor Roosevelt, and the captain, Captain Callahan at the time. And a guy's like, it's King George the fifth. I put fifth, he put sixth. I was like, you're right. And then the other guy, that's not Queen Elizabeth. She was 18. I said, well, that's not true. Her mother's name was Elizabeth also. Yeah. So I had to go back and repost that, and the guy never made another comment, which I'm not picking on him. He might not have seen it, but
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, trust me, I know how you feel. I'm the queen of typos. Like, typos are like my thing. I don't know why. I don't proofread. I just get so excited, and then all of a sudden I post it, and I'm like, that spelled wrong. I missed a period.
That's why I started following your page. Like, you were talking about the history books. I'm laughing to myself. I'm looking at all the books back there, and like that's just a small portion of my. I've got a closet with another bookshelf full of them. So I know what you're talking about. Like it's like you never get done trying to read what you want to read. I keep buying them. I'm like a junkie.
same here. What I'll do is I'll buy a new book and I'll start reading it, and then I'll go buy another book and then I'll start reading it, and then I'll go back to the book that I was reading before, like 4 books earlier, and then I have to reread the book because I forgot what happened in the beginning.
If it's
I'm
a
like, ah, crap.
if it's a really good book, I'll buy it in hardback and I'll buy it on Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
And because being out and eating someplace, I don't generally haul books around my motorcycle, but my phone's big enough. I'll open up my book on my phone and I've reread like Neptune's Inferno. I don't know if you ever heard of that by James Hornfisher. Have you seen that one?
I've heard it. I haven't. I don't own it.
It's really good, but you have to really be into the naval battles around Guadalcanal, or you would get bored. But I've read that book. I can't tell you how many times. Like the movie Public Enemies with Johnny Depp. Did you ever see that?
Yep.
Have you read the book?
I haven't read the book. No.
The book's amazing. The book's 100 times better than the movie.
That's always
hands down
how it is. Yeah.
But he
more
covered
details and everything.
Yeah, he covers so much more of all the other criminals of that era.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I don't really care about this, even being a police officer, because when I get done with the day, I forget them, and then I come to read about these old gangsters. I was, wow, it was really interesting. So it might be another one to add to the list.
Yeah, that's another fascination of mine is the 20s gangster era. It's so intriguing. I just remember growing up, and my Oma, she would, whenever they came out to visit us, she would always have the History Channel on, and she'd always have documentaries on. And back in the early 90s, the documentaries were a little bit creepier.
Right.
And so as a kid, I was like, oh, I was fascinated by it, but I was super scared, like learning about all these gangsters. But I feel like a lot of history people are very fascinated by the gangster.
I guess it's just
gangster era.
A neat era altogether, just a simpler time. So I mean, but I know what you mean by the History Channel. Remember when the History Channel was good?
When it used to show some, history documentaries and not aliens.
And not, my 500-pound life or whatever. All these stupid reality shows I could care less about. I don't get that.
I know. All my friends are like, you don't subscribe, you don't have history streaming service. And I said, no, because it's all reality TV or ancient aliens or whatever. I want like I want history documentaries. And so, but sadly, that's where our society and entertainment is going. They like to, with social media started it with the whole reality TV thing. People like to see other people's lives. And
well, I don't know how old you are, and I'm not going to guess because I'm not going to fall into that trap. But
I would never be offended whatever age you say.
I would still remember the first reality show, The Real World. I remember when it first came out. I was a kid, and that was like that changed the whole world. Yeah, which is crazy to think about it now. But yeah,
I think the first one was Real World Seattle. Wasn't it Seattle?
Or New York or something. I don't remember. But I remember there was one girl in there from Birmingham, Alabama, and I grew up in Mississippi, so it was about an hour or 2 hours away, so I remember that. But
yeah.
But when you talk about the book thing, I mentioned it to you one time before in a post. The Naval Institute Press, every year at Christmas, all their stuff goes half price.
Oh,
with
really?
Free shipping. Yeah. I've spent several $100s thanks to them.
Oh.
So
yeah, I buy some new books like from Amazon or whatever, or Barnes and Nobles, but I think 95% of my books I've gotten from Goodwill, or there's a huge bookstore chain out here called Powell's, and they sell new and used books, and they have a huge warehouse.
You're in Texas, right?
No, I'm in Oregon.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. I saw the Alamo picture. I was like, okay, she's in Texas. I didn't.
Oh, I visited Texas back in September. I was out there for a fundraising gala for veterans, and had some time, so decided to go to the Alamo.
I picked up a lot of Tom Clancy books in those secondhand stores like that for really cheap.
Yeah.
Really good prices. Yeah.
Tom Clancy is good, but also Powell's. If anybody's interested, you can also buy their new and used books online at powellsbooks.com. So you don't have to live in Oregon to go to get the good deals. But yeah, it's amazing. Secondhand stores are so amazing for books. So let's see. This is from my mother. She says, "Thank you for putting your life on the line every day as a police officer. I appreciate you."
Oh, tell her thank you. Yes, that's more than, I guess you don't think about it anymore, but I do appreciate the support. I know all officers do. It's just a weird time to be doing the job.
All right. So let's see. I missed some questions in the comments. If you guys have questions, please submit them in the question mark bubble on the bottom right hand corner of your screen, because sometimes they get lost. They get lost in the comments, and we want to make sure that we're getting all the questions answered. Have you been to any non-U.S. Navy museum ships?
Okay, I've been to England a couple of times, and each time I could see Belfast across from the Tower of London, and I haven't been on board her. But when I go back, probably next year, I'm going to go to Belfast, and I want to go to the Victory. Okay. But I don't think I've been to any other than that. Yeah. No, I've seen some old Liberty style ships. Back in 1998, the John P. Bobo, which is a maritime prepositioning ship, ran aground coming into Rota, Spain, into the port, and all the the Marine Expedition Unit's gear for 30 days to sustain combat was on the John P. Bobo. And John P. Bobo was a Marine awarded the Medal of Honor for Vietnam. So they took the John P. Bobo into the harbor in Rota, and they undocked all the equipment they could get. I mean, Harrier engines, tanks, everything. And then they took her across the bay, and they put her in dry dock there to repair the hull. So I was in Italy, and the Marine Corps Security Force Company in Rota didn't have enough people, so they sent a lot of us up there. And the Spanish were using our old naval ships there. So we had, I mean, like some old cargo ships. They would come in. They hardly ever left port. We could watch them going off every day, like a work day, like people clocking in and going on the ship and going off. But yeah, they were pretty old, but that's the closest I've ever gotten to be on another ship. So
how many ships are there that you can visit in the U.S.?
Well, let's see. Now there's a website the guy runs called Museum Ships. He keeps up with museum ships all over the world. His page has grown huge. Matter of fact, he's partnered with the Naval Institute. Oh, that's awesome. United States wise, I mean, I guess it depends. I've been on the Hornet, the carrier in California, Alabama, let's see, North Carolina, Wisconsin, New Jersey, Salem, the Massachusetts, the Constitution. I mean, maybe 10 or so that I can think of. There's a lot. I mean, you could pull it up on yourself and see. The Constitution was cool, but it's in the old Boston Navy Yard, and you could see the graving dock there where they could still bring it in and port and like do dry dock repair because it's a dry dock there. But the old Marine barracks is there because it was a big Navy facility in the, I guess, up until the 80s or whatever. God, I can't give you a realistic, because what you and I would think of like a warship, like you want to go on a battleship, okay? Yeah. But some people would go to an old tug that was used at whatever place and say, okay, that's a museum ship too, because it's turned into, like, I guess technically the Queen of England's old ship her old yacht is a museum ship now. Oh. Yes. The British didn't save anything besides the Belfast. It's a light cruiser. It was the only one that the British saved besides Victory. That's it. So like if you go there, there's not a ton of stuff like that. But well, I mean, if you've been out in Oregon, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, we scrapped a ton after the war because we needed to. But
well, they took a lot of them. I have the book someplace. I'll find it later. But it's the pre-World War II ships. You know, like the Iowas were designed in the 30s. Yeah, John Wayne's old ship is a museum. Yeah, the I think it's the Golden Goose, or the Goose, the Flying Goose, something like that. It was an old minesweeper from World War II. He converted it into his private yacht.
I did not know that.
It's a wooden hull.
John Wayne. Ugh.
Oh, the Warrior. Yeah, I'm the guy's like your Warrior. Out in Long Beach, Queen Mary. I've seen Queen Mary, but I haven't been on her. So the ships from let's see, the Washington and North Carolina, they were the newest modern battleships of their day, but they didn't have as heavy of armor. And again, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on it, but the guns of the battleships, the main guns, are designed, whatever they carry, they're designed to defeat. And they have immunity zones so far out, the guns aren't supposed to be able to damage the ship beyond what it can take. The closer it gets and the closer the range gets, the immunity zones start to drop. And, and they have torpedo protection to a certain point, but the North Carolina and Washington, they were armed really heavy, but the armor wasn't as good, and they could only achieve like 28 knots. And then you've got this, they call them the Sodaks. It's the South Dakota
Mm-hmm.
class. South Dakota, Alabama, Indiana, and Massachusetts, not in that order.
Mm-hmm.
And they were compact designs. They weren't as fast, but they had they had the same gun as the Iowas, just a different caliber, like 5 inches smaller in diameter. They still shoot the same shells, just the barrels weren't as long.
Okay.
And then the Iowas come along, and they're all we know now. It's like what you and I would think of, like when you watch that movie Battleship. Did you ever watch?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But theoretically, they weren't even going to be the strongest. The next ones were going to be the Montana class, but they were slow and big, and the carriers took over World War II, so they canceled that class and never made it. So the Iowas were the fastest, they were the longest, and they could still fit through the Panama Canal, where an aircraft carrier has to go around the Cape to come up. They can't go through the canal.
Yeah.
The super carriers can't do it. So, yeah, and I've spoken with the captain of the Iowa in the 80s, Captain Sequist. I mean, they're just fascinating guys. They've got a lot of neat stuff. The Iowas were probably, they brought New Jersey back for Vietnam. Missouri was on duty when Korea started, because we talk about scrapping them. All the old ships, they slowly eventually got rid of them, but Truman cut the military really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And the only battleship that he left in service that was frontline was Missouri, because he's from Missouri, and his daughter christened the ship. So that's why they think that she was still on duty when Korea kicked off.
Yeah.
But, so and in the 80s, they came back. Reagan brought them back for the 600 ship Navy.
Mm-hmm.
But Turret 2 on the Iowa on April 19th, 1989, suffered an inboard explosion in the center gun of Turret 2, and it killed 47 sailors, and that was the death knell of them. And after that, they slowly were put out. Missouri and Wisconsin made it to the Gulf War, and then after that, they went out to pasture. But yeah, they were still using powder and shells from the 30s. The powder,
that's crazy.
Yeah, the propellant bags are silk, and
Mm-hmm.
if you ever look at them, you can see that when you think of a powder grain, whatever size, their powder grains are like shotgun shell size in this big 110 pound bag. They were mixing, they were doing experimental shoots, more powder, less powder, to try to determine how far they could get them to match the missiles. I mean, it's like, even talking about it, people get really pissed off to this day, because the Navy tried to blame a sailor named Clayton Hartwig. They said he was homosexual and he wanted to kill everybody. The family was illegal shoots back. The powder wasn't stored properly. Captain Sequist and I talked. He said the thing with those guns is you've got to keep practicing, keep shooting, and keep shooting, and keep shooting. And they had new captain had taken over, and his concern wasn't the guns, it was the missiles and the engineering plan.
Yeah.
So when they finally did a live shoot, because I'm not going to go into super detail, but there's a guy, he rams the powder, and they're using like 1930s technology. Even though it's really robust, he sits in a bicycle seat, he faces this way, the shell comes up, he lowers the cradle, the cradle extends, and it has a copper spanning tray. He takes the rammer and he pushes it forward. It looks like a little throttle, just like that. He pushes it forward and it rams the shell right into the breech until it hits a stop. He retracts the rammer. They drop powder in there. They push it up. So many bags go up. A bag goes back. The powder car opens again. More powder comes out. It's all lined up. The gun captain gives the order like this with his hand, and the rammer man, it's kind of like there's no like regular control. He has to finesse it. He has to know what he's doing. So they found after the explosion, because the breech was open, they feel like the rammer man extended the rammer 24 inches beyond the breech that he was supposed to. And I didn't know this because I had to read a lot. Apparently, when they believed the powder was compressed up against the shell to the point it crushed it a little bit, it caused a spark, and that's what caused it to explode. And the guys that didn't initially kill in the gun house, the explosion went straight down to the powder flats and then back out. So if you ever see the explosion, you'll see stuff pop out of the barrels. That's because it's gone down and come back out.
Oh,
and
wow.
Whoever didn't kill right then, it suffocated them below. They were using the powder bags had polyurethane wrappers put on them to cut down barrel wear, because I've done too much reading on this. they don't make the barrels anymore. The Westervelt Arsenal might make them, but like the place they were made at is no longer in business. So to save barrels, they found out by putting a polyurethane bag on them, it cut down on the erosion of the liner. But the problem with polyurethane, and I didn't know this, when you burn it, it produces cyanide. So the guys who did not die initially, the fumes and the noxious gases is what killed a lot of them down there too.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's if you ever read about it, and you talk to some of those guys, like when I post stuff, because I have a Facebook page also, I do it, and every April 19th of that month, it's very, because you know, some people are not considerate at all. And I don't know if they mean to be, but if your mother had died and somebody is just talking about, well, you know, so-and-so, but to them, it doesn't mean anything. Like I've had to learn that being a cop, just because it doesn't mean anything to me doesn't mean it doesn't bother somebody else.
Yeah.
And for that, that's so, it's so really touchy-feely. You got to be careful with it, because there was a government scandal. They spent more money to investigate what did it than they could have used to fix the gun. They never repaired it. They sealed Turret 2 off, and it was never used again. And then they went on another deployment, and then the Iowa was eventually put out to pasture. They never.
That is so.
And the Navy finally, I think they finally issued an apology to Hartwick's family, but it took a while. And it depends. Some of the guys, I've listened to one of the admirals who's in charge of the investigation. He still blames him to this day.
He still blames
him
to this day?
Yeah, he still blames him to this day.
Really?
And they, on the Iowa, which is really neat, you can't go down there unless you know somebody. They took me down there to Hartwick's bunk, and his sister had signed the bunk, and they keep the light on in his bunk as a memorial for him. But, you know, I mean, there's a video, it's a guy, he's doing a report on the Iowa, and he's on board a year or so prior to the explosion. You can see Hartwick walk around the deck, because a guy posted it, said, hey, that's Hartwick right there walking on the deck. Because he was an odd guy, I guess, depending on who you talk to. I know one of his sisters, but even when I talked to Captain Sequist, like they had a big book come out called A Glimpse of Hell. A lot of the crew hated it. Some of the crew liked it. So it's, you know, it's just, no one's ever going to figure out what happened in the turret that day. But from years of work in traffic accidents, it was probably just human error, just a series of misfortunate things. I mean, because even if the man was homosexual, and who cares if he was, I don't think he would just suddenly decide to kill 47 of his own crewmates. They try to say he created a chemical timer and shoved it into the breach. Yeah, there was a lot of safety procedures not followed. They found one of the guys had a headset on. When they found him, he was dead. The headset was still playing.
Oh my!
But you know, you weren't allowed to have lighters or headsets like that in the turrets. I mean, that's a whole interesting story in itself.
Yeah, small little things that created a domino effect.
I mean, and like I said, I don't know for sure, but we'll never know. But that was the excuse that people used to help get rid of the battleships. So Vietnam, you know, they didn't want to use the New Jersey. The admirals in the carrier aviation didn't want to. They didn't want to fool with battleships coming out, because it would take money and from their programs. So I'm sorry, someone's messing with me.
No, you're fine.
That wasn't a big thing for the Navy to do. They didn't want to get in a battleship. They were using old cruisers to gunfire. Oh, you're welcome, Andrew. And an 8-inch shell weighs like 350 pounds, or however, it's not a ton. An armor-piercing shell weighs 2,700 pounds. Jeez. So you can find videos of New Jersey shooting in Vietnam and the impact, and it's like it's incredible. So the Secretary of Defense at the time retired. When he retired, they brought the battleship back. The Vietnamese were so scared of it, they would not return to the peace talks until New Jersey was put back into mothballs. She could shoot 24 hours around the clock, where at that time, you know, all weather, there were no Tomahawk missiles. Yeah. There was nothing like that. They had missiles, but not to that extent.
Yeah.
So, you know, you could cruise up the coastline and hit 75% of the targets in North Vietnam.
Wow.
Like where it took them so long to knock out the Dong Ha Bridge, or in Ho, I can't remember, I think it was Dong Ha. They could have done that in about an hour with the battleship. They could have cruised up the coast and hammered Haiphong, you know, but I mean, I guess they just didn't want to escalate the war.
Yeah.
But yeah, they put her back in mothballs because of cost and whatnot. But it came out later the reason why they had done it was because the Vietnamese refused to come back to the peace tables. They called her the Black Dragon. Yeah, that was her nickname. And
Wow.
she would just cruise up and down the. Now the captain at that time was a really interesting guy by the name of J. Edward Snyder. In the old days, they had those anti-aircraft guns, the Bofors. You know, they could see in there like that. They kept the tubs. It was a very light renovation work to get the New Jersey ready to fire to shoot in Vietnam. So they took all the guns off, and they left these tubs. And he took the front 2 tubs and painted them blue, and they welded them and converted them into pools for the crew. So the crew had pools on these gun tubs, which is I've seen a picture of him floating in one of the tubs. But I mean, she could shoot round the clock. You know, you're talking about a lot of ordnance versus how much a plane and a pilot cost. Or if you're flying a B-52 or the strike aircraft, she saved a lot of money and a lot of lives. And you know that how it is when it comes to money and whatnot. And they put her out to pasture, and then in the 80s they brought them back. And New Jersey actually fired in Beirut after the Marine barracks was bombed. In Beirut when the Marine barracks were killed. I think it was October 23rd, 1983. And she fired 75% of all the 16-inch projectiles and powder in the theater. They had to bring more out. However, once again, it's you've been around military guys, and you know how administration works. A guy named Captain Maselli had rebagged a lot of the old powder, thinking they're going to, make it fresh and newer. Well, I didn't. I've had to read about this too. The powder is like it's like if you made a cake, and I'm not saying it because you're a woman. Say you make a cake, you've got to. Well, I know, but people think I'm being a jerk. But you've got a set of ingredients, and you've got things that go a particular way and how they're done. The Navy, even in the 30s, they had made it a particular way. They just remixed it, however, so it changed the chemical makeup and the way it was done. So when New Jersey fired, she was firing erratic shots, so she wasn't very accurate. It scared the hell out of people. It actually killed some innocent people, but it did do the effect what they wanted it to do. But still, after that, they quit mixing the powder. And a matter of fact, that same captain was in charge of the. He helped the Navy investigation into Turret 2. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's that's a big mess. But they had battleship symposiums back then. Like they were working on a round that could shoot 100 miles. It was a cut down 16-inch round. It cut down to a sabot, like a 14-inch. I spent way too much time reading this stuff. I mean, it's just.
I love it. That's great.
But yeah, I mean, they added Tomahawk missiles. They added Harpoon anti-ship missiles. They added the Phalanx. If you ever go to Iowa, let me know, and I'll call the guy. You're married, right? You and your husband?
No,
are you married?
Not married.
Okay,
no.
I thought you were. I'm sorry. If you ever decide to go down to Iowa to Los Angeles. The guy on there is Stan Sato. He's their head carpenter, right? And he taught me something when I went out there. The wooden decks of a battleship, you see them. They look neat. They're actually planked down. They're planked down a particular way and locked in. So when they fire the guns, the planking doesn't fly off. And so Stan is redoing the decking down there, pieces at a time, with the original way they blocked it in. So now a lot of the ships are just putting fake or look, because it's teak deck, so it's really expensive. So they're putting laminate or whatever down to make it look nice and good, but Stan's going back and section by section, making it as accurate as it was in those days. And the funny part is he takes the reclaimed wood and he makes souvenirs for people.
Oh my god!
And you can buy it on
so
their.
Cool.
You can buy it on their website. And so, some old pictures there. I've got a little Iowa challenge coin there.
Oh, cool!
And he tells you how to take care of the box. And this has been added. I've got a hand-built, custom-built 1911, a Colt, and I'm going to put that in the box, and we'll cut it out and put it in the box. But yeah, he made that. That's 1940s teak deck.
That is so cool.
Right. I got it as a gift, so I don't know what he charges, but they do small projects. and Stan will take that stuff and it goes to the battleship to keep the lights
That's
on and
awesome.
whatnot. So
That is really awesome.
it's really cool.
Yeah. We have a few questions.
Okay.
Let's see. This is from Jen from Walk with History. What part of a ship do you like the most?
What part of the ship do I like the most? Okay. Now, this is going to sound so stupid because if you like history, you obviously can. I don't know about you, but like when I'm doing something history related or I'm on a particular area, I try to imagine myself there. Even when I'm there, like at the time. There's a video that Alabama has posted of like a bad weather rolling in, and they've got the lights on the ship and the radar's turning, and it's like hurricane style rain coming in, and you can't really see the ground, and it looks like the ship is steaming, and it's just really cool. To like I like going in. I'm not an engineer guy. I wish I was as smart as an engineer. That's what fascinates me about those ships because for 1930s technology, they're very sophisticated.
Yeah.
I love walking up to the bow and looking back and just taking it all in. But going to the guns to me I like going to places that you can't get to.
Yeah.
I like going down deep into areas. The Alabama, I got a guy, and I've been asked multiple times. The bridge, yeah, I love going to the bridge, especially because you're just standing there holding the wheel, going high into the fire control tower, going really high up. That's a neat place. Did you ever see the movie Under Siege with Steven Seagal?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
That was filmed on the Alabama. We were there, and I was a kid on spring break, and they had left all the latches open. So my dad and I crawled to the top on the Alabama, and that was like the first time I got up there. Seagull took a crap on me up there, but it was still pretty good luck. The guy on the Alabama took me down, and we went down to the back of turret 3 because it's like the gun turrets weigh as much as a World War II destroyer. That's how much they weigh by themselves. We went down all these little bitty ladders, and it looked like Titanic down there because it's lime green, it's dark, and it's dusty, and but I got to see where they could dunk the powder and all this stuff. There's a lot of black mold down there, but still, I don't know. Like I definitely like the bridge, but the guns themselves, those to me are just super interesting.
I've never been on a battleship before. It's a goal of mine. I have a huge goal laundry list of places I want to go to, but I have a feeling that would be the number one spot for me for me too.
Well, let me know. We'll go out there and we'll meet and we'll take Stan and get Stan to give us a tour.
That would
because Stan's and they have some of the guys who work on there. One guy had retired or quit his job and moved to LA just to work on the Iowa because he was a former sailor.
Oh, that's
and
really cool.
You'll meet some of the guys who were there when Turret 2 exploded. It's really eerie to go there. I'll tell you that. Like, I don't know if you've been to a lot of Civil War stuff, or any. I was stationed in Italy. Like I said, I got to go to, what's the Monte Cassino?
Oh, yeah.
And I've been there, and it's cool. But going to Germany was very different. I don't know about you, but like I've been to Germany, and I was still in the Marine Corps. We were up there for a training trip, and we're riding down the road. I'm like, God, does anyone feel like we should be machine gunning these months? I'm like, what? Like, I've been to Bellewood in France. That was, I will say this, Bellewood, out of all the places I've ever been, you could bury me there. That is like going to Mecca for a Marine. You can the wheat fields are still there. You can cross the wheat fields, and you can see what they went through, and they find artifacts there all the time, even to this day.
Yeah.
It's a really unique experience. I mean, do you know what Bellewood is? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Well, I said it, and I was like, well, maybe she doesn't know what that one is. But yeah. But so the when I go to the battleships, it depends, I guess, on which ship. When I went to New Jersey, I have a lot of respect for Captain Snyder. So when I got into his cabin, I thought that was just surreal because that's a guy. He was still alive at the time. I never talked to him, but he's passed away now. But to be in a place where a man who put everything out he would bring the troops out from the shore to the ship and give them like 2 or 3 days off, clean their clothes, let them have a few days of R&R, and then send them back. He was big on the crew's morale. and then sometimes they would do harassing and interdiction rounds. They would just fire randomly above a position way out into the jungle, and he would just do it to let the Vietnamese know that they were there, just to kind of give the guys on the ground support. So, and then when he was taken off the ship after a year, which is ironic. The next guy came on had been a young ensign on the New Jersey. And so he had to put her to sleep. So he didn't get to be the captain very long. I know that was pretty heartbreaking for him, but he's the guy who wrote in her logbook, which they made it her slogan later. It said, "Rest well, get sleep lightly, and answer the call it begins sounded to provide firepower for freedom." So the ship's logo is now Firepower for Freedom.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, she was just there a year, but she made a huge impact.
Yeah.
Missouri. I think if you went to Missouri, I think where they signed signed the end of World War II plaque, I think that would be amazing.
That would
Wisconsin.
be really cool.
Wisconsin to me felt like she was alive. They have really done the Combat Information Center and the Combat Engagement Center. It's this big room with they try to replicate the computers and put the screens up, and they'll turn all the lights off and the blue and reds go on. And they've got pre-recorded audio. That is really cool. That's just something that you can't get. Where Devil Dog come from? Devil Dog came from the military's. It came from the Battle of Belleau Wood, when the German soldiers claimed that the Marines fought like devil dogs or Teufelhunden. That's the lore. So Teufelhunden translates roughly into devil dog, and that's where the Marines got theirs from. If you live by the Wisconsin in Norfolk, definitely go check her out. And of course, the Wisconsin is right down the street from where MacArthur and his wife are buried in a building in downtown Norfolk.
Oh, I didn't know that. Do you plan to see the Battleship Texas leave dry dock when she's done?
I would like to go. I guess it just depends. My work schedule is like this. Some days it's nothing, but I work a lot. So I'd like to go. Come visit me, Sarah. Where's she located at?
Jen, I forgot. I think she's in Virginia, but I might be just making that up. Jen from Walk with History got me this sweater, so had to wear it because we're talking about the Navy, and I also live in this sweater too.
Well, send me your address, and I'll send you.
Sweater.
This is one of my business coins for the motorcycle guys. So send me your address. Yeah, I'll send you one. That's one thing I haven't done. I've been meaning. I wanted to. You know how it is when you're trying to grow your page, and I don't know what happened. Just one day, I just started getting hits, and then hits, and then hits, and then hits, and it just finally got to over 20,000, which is still not 40, 80, but still I'm happy. I'm just happy with what I got.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about getting a coin done, something like that, and maybe, but you don't. When it becomes work, it's not as much fun.
I completely understand that, because it takes away the passion and the fun, and then your passion isn't a passion anymore.
Well, like teaching firearms, I've been doing it since 1998, and when I started doing it for a side job and not for the police department or the military, it got to be where it's like, oh my God,
yeah,
I got to go out and do a church group, so which I'm happy to do it because it's pretty good money, but it's like, it's because you're trying to get more classes and you start stressing. So I mainly focus on. So are you big into guns too, or are you just regular any kind of history?
What?
Do you like guns at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the pawn shop the other day, a friend called me. This is a nice Colt. So it looks like a 1918 model. Okay. The serial number was obliterated by somebody because it said U.S. property. They didn't want to get arrested, apparently. Oh. It's got a marking right there that you can't really see it here. But this pistol it's a 1924 transitional model between the old 1911 and the A1 from World War II. And there were only 10,000 made. And the guy didn't know what he had at the pawn shop, and I didn't know either. And a collector called me. I sent it to him. He goes, "You've got a good pistol, even though it's not numbered anymore because they took the old number off, put a fake one on." He said, "You can still prove what it is." So that was pretty sharp for $1,300. Bringing out the weapons.
That is pretty cool. When you wait, come on, pop up. Oh wait, did I not? Oh, here we go. When you went to see the Alabama, did you get to see anything on her you weren't able to before?
Okay. Yes. And if you're related to the Alabama, they're very particular about. I have a lot of pictures I took that day, and I have posted it, and people from Alabama contacted me and asked me to take the pictures down. I don't know what the big secret is. I don't know why. I don't know why that's such a big deal. But
So you have no idea what it is you
I don't know
saw.
I have no idea what's the big deal. I really
God.
don't. Yes, I went down. If you've ever been on Alabama, the person asking, you go on the back of the ship. They have the rear turret. That's where the walk-on is now. I was in there talking to the guy, and they find all kinds of lighters and stuff. They have they've got a lot of weapons on board. They're Japanese. They found on the ship. They were Japanese, but no one knew they were there.
Oh, wow.
All of the 20 millimeter, the light machine guns are functional. They just keep them under lock and key.
Yeah.
But he took me down. He had a lot of neat stories. He took me down to the bottom of turret 3 where the powder flats are. I went through all that. We went through a lot of different stuff. I got to see, there's this room he showed me. It looked like someone was working on a piece of equipment, and they just stopped and got up and walked out. He said, this is the eeriest room we've got. It's a small little workspace, and it looks like someone's working on the radio or something, and they just set their tools down and got up and walked out. That was really odd. Let's see. It's odd because like there's square, like imagine this is a big square, and there's ladders here, and they're not wide. And I'm looking down. We didn't have a flashlight. He's like, "Don't fall." And I was like, "Holy shit! If I fall, I'm dead. We're gonna fall like 2 or 3 stories."
Yeah.
So we went down there. It was dusty and that old World War II Korea green paint job, which like it's lime green looking. But he took me up to turret 1. He opened the door on the right side, and it's a straight drop to that gun pit. It's like 20 feet. And I stood on top of the gun because the gun's like that. So he and I stood up there on top of the gun, and he took my picture on there. And then we got down to the breach. He's like, "Put your head in there." I was like, "I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that." But you get to see, like, for me, because I was really still into which I still am, but I was trying to learn more about how the guns work themselves. And he let me play with all the controls. He took me down to Central Station, the main battery plot. He unlocked the cage, and I got to pull the triggers on the guns because they're operated from a control station. You can manually operate them, but they're operated from a main battery plot, which they have double. Everything's redundant on there. And something else, if you Google USS Missouri firing, there's a home video this kid took, and it's like in the late 80s, maybe early 90s, and the barrel's doing this, right? The barrel's moving. The back of the breech is moving, like that. And he's standing in there, and he's talking to the camera, and you hear it go, and it starts to slow down, and boom, it recoils. He's not wearing hearing protection. It's not that loud in there, apparently, compared to the outside. So you ever seen an Abrams tank riding? You ever seen an Abrams tank driving down the road?
Yeah, I'm most likely.
If you ever see one, well, if you ever watch it, you can see sometimes the barrel is not moving with the tank because the barrel is locked onto a target. They had that for the battleships in the 1930s also.
Oh, wow.
Yes. The computers, when they brought them back in the 80s, they didn't even put modern computers on them to control the big guns. They used the analog crank wheeled from the 30s. Yeah, they repaired them like a pinball machine guy repaired some of them. Yeah. And New Jersey, they had New Jersey's guns. And of course, this is way after she had been retired. They had one of the fire control computers. And I read this from a guy's blog. He worked on there. People would go by and they'd tour the ship and they would turn the dials, and it shows elevation, curvature of the earth, time, all this stuff, where they got the power turned on to it at one point, and the machine started whirling and turning. And he wrote there, he said for like 15, 20 minutes, the machine was just it was running calculations. For the 10 or 15 years it had been turned off, it stored every time someone came by there and cranked the wheel or did something as a fire control problem. So when they turned the power back on, it went through all the fire control problems for the past 10 or 15 years and solved them and continued to work. And it's just a hand crank. It's digital. It's not digital. It's all analog. So it's geared. But yeah, I thought that was crazy. Something built in the 30s for 10, 15 years solved every problem. Someone just walking by, some kid turned the wheel, it created a new fire control problem, and it solved every one of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is that is
I
very
know,
interesting.
I know I battleship nerded out on you, so
No, I
I ate
I
up a lot of
love
our
it. I
time.
love learning about stuff that I don't know that much about. Um, do you plan on taking the Battleship North Carolina Hidden Tour? Sorry, I can't see. Can you see where the torpedo hit?
I don't know if you can. I didn't get a chance to go on that tour because they didn't have it when I went. I'm going to go back and go through it. They stripped the North Carolina and the Alabama and the Massachusetts to support the battleships in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I know the guy told me they brought 3 tractor trailers of equipment off of Alabama to get the battleships back in service in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen pictures down there where they've taken turbines or I can't remember, a superconductor off the New Jersey and put it on another ship to make it work. So I would like to go to it. They have a firepower tour on New Jersey. You can go down and like go through the turret, and they show you where they load the powder, and then you can fake fire the gun. You'll sit on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
That just looks pretty cool.
That actually sounds pretty cool. World War II tank history wants to know. Pop up. Oh, there it goes. What do you think of the Yamamoto?
The Yamamoto, whatever. Yamamoto was.
Oh, Yamamoto. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
get.
see,
No,
I can't see that far, so like
it's okay.
it's blurry to
I do
me.
it all
So
the time too.
so if I read something wrong.
Yamamoto was just a technological marvel, in my opinion. A ship that weighed that much, still getting up to a pretty high speed.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was just a victim of the times. I mean, you've got no air cover in a time with. That's what they. I mean, they took a lot to sink her. I think it was.
Yeah.
I wish one had survived. It was a fascinating ship. That's a big debate that battleship people love to fight about. Who was better, Yamato or Iowa?
Yamamoto.
Well, Yamamoto was the admiral.
No, I know.
But I get confused too. I do it all the time.
If I get really close, to the screen, it's literally because I can't see what's there.
You're fine. I do it all the time too. I think it was a crazy ship. It was huge, but they probably should have used something else instead of building that. But how battleships did they use? What battleships did they use?
How many battleships did they use for targets in the atoll during the nuke?
I can't remember all of them. I know Nevada, Pennsylvania, Nagato. Those are 3 for sure. They used the German cruiser Prince Eugen, which had accompanied Bismarck on her one and only raid. Prince Eugen's in Kwajalein. She rolled over and sank. She's still there. They towed Nevada out, eventually sunk her. 3 or 4, but I don't know all the Allied ships that were there. So I know there's a few battleships. Without Google, sometimes I'm not going to remember it. I don't want to sit here like, yeah, I know. Hang on.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on 1 second.
Weird you ask. I've got
it. Have battleships, I don't know, Instagram is lagging. Have battleship sailors ever told you how big the waves were when they were sailing?
I did an interview. If you go to I have a Facebook page and a group for the Iowa class battleships. I did an interview with a gunnery sergeant on the Iowa. He was the Mardet, the Marine detachments on the battleship in the 80s, and he was also the first sergeant of the Wisconsin when they put her back into service in the late 80s. He said that he was a gator freighter guy riding on the Amtraks and the LHAs and whatnot. He said there's times I was walking with a foot on the wall and a foot on the floor because the waves were so bad. He said the battleship wasn't like that. He goes, I would go up to the Admiral's Bridge, which is below the main bridge, and you could just ride it out. He said it was coming over the bow and stuff, but it was nothing compared to the escorts. Like they would just be dipping and down. So they rode it really, really well. And I'm sure not riding to a hurricane would be different, but for even rough weather, they said it'd get a little rough, but nothing like the other ships would take.
Oh, wow. Let's see. Andrew has another question. Have you ever heard of Calvin Graham or my guy John Seagraves that I wrote a book about, or his son did?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay. So actually, I have.
Tell me if you want to send it to me though. Send me a message and I'll look into it. I'll definitely look at it.
Okay. I should start doing this on YouTube instead of Instagram. Instagram always gives me like it's such a pain in the butt sometimes. So I know battleships are like
your thing. But like, what is one thing in history that you're like weirdly obsessed with and you don't know why? Like, whether it's a collection item, a specific battle, a specific ship, or anything like that. Like for me, I have a really weird obsession with the USS Indianapolis. I don't know why, I just do. So that's my weird obsession. I have no idea
Okay,
why. What is
it's
yours?
historical, but it's fantasy also. I know this is gonna sound so stupid. King Arthur and the Arthurian
It's
legend.
not stupid. That's not stupid.
I'm telling you, if I whatever I'm doing, if I see some King Arthur related, I've got to stop and read it.
Oh,
I've got to do it. Like I found a company in Canada that makes the original Excalibur from the 1981 or 83 Excalibur movie.
uh-huh.
It's like $800. I was like, oh, here's my deposit.
Yeah.
In a couple of months, I'm going to order one. I don't know what King. Oh, sorry,
Oh.
King Arthur is like. That's like my favorite. It's. I know it's fantasy, but it's also.
Uh-oh. Let's get Bob back on here. It's not a history behind the page episode without something dropping, something leaving, me mispronouncing something. So it's a typical history behind the page show. Ah. Oh, you're frozen. Oh, there you are.
Sorry, that was awkward. It flipped over. I don't know what happened. I got this
It's
little
all
thing
good.
mounted up. It fell over. But yeah, if it's King Arthur related, I've got to read it. I've always thought that was like the most fascinating thing ever. And then I don't know. I mean, there's other stuff I could think of, but if you had to make me press one right now, but battleships, I guess I'm obsessed because I'll be at work and the guy will say something about it and I'll start talking like I've just blown your ear up, going through all this minute detail. But like to me, just the amount of for the majority of the workforce at that time was not highly educated. For them to be operate those systems and do all that stuff to me has always just been mind blowing. But yeah, King Arthur stuff, I'm with you. Like
I love that. I know, like, Merlin or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a sci-fi show called Merlin with King Arthur and Merlin stuff. I was obsessed with it for a little bit when it came out, like 2007 or something.
I think but beyond that, the biggest one I've ever been obsessed with is the USS Houston. Like
Houston?
The Houston, because they like I said, well, it's kind of hard to see, but they went down and they just disappeared off the face of the earth. The Houston and the Perth, they were trying to escape to Australia. I don't know if you know that story or not. And
No.
they were the last of the Asiatic fleet. They were combined Australian, British, Dutch, whatever, and Japanese attacked, and they were trying to hold the Japanese back with all these relic ships against the modern Japanese Navy, and they were getting pushed back and pushed back. And finally, the only two ships that were capital ships left were the Houston, which was a heavy cruiser, and the Perth, which is an Australian light cruiser. And they were trying to get out to make it to Australia, which they probably should have left before then. The Houston had suffered a hit on her rear turret, so she only had 2 turrets operational. They were running out of ammunition, everything, and the Japanese were just rolling over everything in the Philippines and pushing them away. And they almost made it out. They're cutting through Java, through the Sunda Strait, and they bungled into the Japanese invasion force at Java in a Bantam Bay. And there was nowhere for them to go. So instead of trying to run, they turned towards the Japanese transports and charged in, and then they disappeared. And no one knew where they were for 2 or 3 years. And a lot of them were captured. You ever heard of the bridge over the River Kwai? Movie?
Yes, I love that movie.
The Houston's crew and the Perth's crew helped build build that bridge and the railway. Yeah, so Ship of Ghost was written by a guy who was a cruiser. He was one of the scouting pilots. And then there was no Ship of Ghost is maybe James Warren Fisher. Yeah. That one. Ship of Ghost. And he's talking about the Houston. Yeah, there you go. So you got it.
I was like, I know I have this book.
But the other guy Walter Winslow wrote the other book. It's not Ship of Ghosts, it's something else, but he was the pilot at the time. But the book it's just like, anything that's like a desperate final act, like the Alamo, like where you're just up against all the odds. I think that is just always, that's always just crazy to me. And then I'm just fascinated about that. And then well, at the Naval Institute, I'm a member of that. I read a lot of their articles, and I read an article about Top Gun, and they were talking about the Crusader pilots in Vietnam. They're the only ones that had guns because the Phantoms didn't have